Breaking news tonight. The Supreme Court out with this ruling on the Trump administration and passports. They're now saying that the Trump administration can force people to ID themselves on passports based on their sex at birth, meaning male or female would be the only options. Critics tonight call that a major blow to transgender rights. The court writing in the order that displaying passport holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. In both cases, they write, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact without subjecting anyone to differential treatment.
This is a super revealing decision for two reasons. One, because, as you say, I think it gives a pretty good window into how the conservative majority views trans rights more generally. Even though this is just on a temporary basis and just as it relates to passports, some of the language there, I think, is pretty frank and strong and gives a pretty candid view. It's also revealing, though, because it now marks yet another example of how this court has decided to treat the Trump administration's use of executive action, Hallie. Remember, this was something that Trump did in his early moments as he took office for the second time, basically saying there are only two sexes at birth. And so passport's just one of those ways that the Trump administration is now trying to flex its muscle on that, Hallie.
Okay, so we're witnessing an absolute political earthquake right now. Congress has unleashed a new impeachment storm against Trump, and this time it's different. This time, Trump's own cabinet is turning against him. Multiple cabinet officials are secretly cooperating with congressional investigators. They're handing over sensitive documents. They're giving explosive testimony about illegal directives and high-level cover-ups. They're exposing the internal dysfunction and corruption of Trump's administration from the inside, and it's causing chaos, complete chaos. The White House is in crisis mode. The Republican Party is fractured. Cabinet officials are resigning or openly opposing Trump, and Congress is moving forward with at least 7 articles of impeachment, backed by evidence from Trump's own appointees. This isn't just Democrats attacking Trump anymore. This is Trump's own team betraying him, and it's tearing Washington apart. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
The liberal wing of the court, and she kind of encapsulates the real world impact here, Hallie. She says the plaintiffs and the classes of transgender Americans they represent are forced to make a difficult choice that no other Americans face. She says use gender incongruent passports and risk harassment, bodily invasions on the one hand, or avoid all activities like travel, opening a bank account, renting a car, starting a new job that may require a passport or the other. So she's sort of teeing up what the equal protection argument would be, which is transgender people on this issue face discrimination in a way that nobody else does. Obviously, they did not win the day on this, Hallie. As I say, this is now going to work its way back through the courts.
Here's what's happening. Following weeks of shutdown drama and bitter budget fights, the House Oversight Committee and other panels moved swiftly to introduce new impeachment articles. These articles target Trump for abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption. But what makes this different from past impeachment efforts is the evidence. Congress has testimony from cabinet officials, documents from inside the administration, proof of illegal directives, evidence of cover-ups, all provided by people Trump appointed, people who were supposed to be loyal to him, but who've decided to cooperate with investigators instead. And that insider testimony is devastating because these aren't political opponents making accusations. These are Trump's own people confirming the crimes. Multiple cabinet officials have secretly been cooperating with investigations. We're talking about people at the highest levels of government, secretaries of departments, senior White House staff, people who were in the room when decisions were made, who saw the documents, who heard the conversations, and they're telling Congress everything. They're handing over sensitive materials that prove Trump directed illegal actions, that he ordered cover-ups, that he abused his authority. All of that is coming from inside the administration, from people who know firsthand what happened. And Congress is using that evidence to build impeachment articles that are much stronger than anything they've had before. The political fallout has been massive. At least 8 senators, both Democrats and Republicans, broke ranks over the shutdown. They cited inside knowledge of oversight probes. They said they'd seen evidence against Trump and his administration, and they decided they couldn't defend him anymore. That's Republicans abandoning Trump, saying publicly that the evidence against him is too strong, that supporting him isn't worth losing their seats. Insider sources are describing what's happening in the Capitol as a meltdown and a bloodbath. Allegiances are fracturing. Longtime Trump allies are distancing themselves, and support for the president is eroding rapidly. The House now faces at least 7 articles of impeachment. These include abuse of power, obstruction of justice, corruption, violating the emoluments clause, and other charges. And all of them are backed by evidence from defecting cabinet officials. That's what makes this impeachment effort different. Past efforts relied on circumstantial evidence or testimony from lower-level officials. But this time, Congress has cabinet secretaries confirming Trump's crimes, senior advisors providing documents, White House staff testifying about cover-ups. That's the kind of evidence that's very hard to dismiss or defend against. Emergency closed-door hearings are happening constantly. Congress is interviewing cabinet officials in secret sessions, getting testimony, reviewing documents, building their case, and suddenly there are resignations. Cabinet officials who don't want to be part of the administration anymore, who don't want to go down with Trump, who are getting out while they can. That's creating chaos in the executive branch. Positions are opening up, departments are losing leadership, and the White House is scrambling to find replacements who are actually willing to work for Trump at this point. All of that is reshuffling power within the administration and the GOP, creating a historic leadership crisis. Republican strategists are warning that defending Trump isn't worth losing seats. They're looking at polls. They're talking to voters in swing districts, and they're realizing that Trump is becoming toxic, that the evidence against him is too strong, that voters are tired of the chaos, and that Republicans who tie themselves too closely to Trump are going to lose in 2026. So strategists are telling Republican members of Congress, distance yourselves from Trump. Don't defend him. Let the impeachment process play out, because defending him is political suicide at this point. The fissures in MAGA world are deepening. Trump's hardcore base still supports him. They think all of this is a witch hunt. They believe Trump is being persecuted. But even within MAGA, there are doubts. Some people are starting to wonder if Trump's own cabinet is turning against him. Maybe there's something to the accusations. Maybe Trump really did commit crimes. And that doubt is weakening Trump's coalition, making it harder for him to maintain unified support, creating opportunities for Republicans who want to move on from Trump to peel away supporters. Trump's response has been predictable. He's attacking the cabinet officials who flip, calling them traitors, claiming they're lying, saying they're part of the deep state conspiracy against him. But that's not working like it used to, because people are wondering if everyone around Trump eventually turns against him, maybe he's the problem. Maybe he's the one who's corrupt and dishonest. And Trump attacking his own appointees just makes him look paranoid and desperate, like he's losing control, like his administration is collapsing around him. So yeah, this is unprecedented. Congress unleashing an impeachment storm backed by testimony from Trump's own cabinet, multiple officials cooperating with investigations, senators from both parties breaking ranks, emergency hearings and sudden resignations, the GOP fracturing, and Trump locked in crisis mode as his own team betrays him. This is one of the most chaotic moments in modern American politics, and it's all happening right now. All right, let's dig into why cabinet officials are flipping and what kind of evidence they're providing to Congress. Because understanding what's motivating these defections and what they're revealing helps explain why this impeachment effort is so different and potentially so successful. First, let's talk about why cabinet officials would cooperate with congressional investigations against the president they're supposed to serve. There are several possible motivations. Self-preservation is the obvious one. If cabinet officials participated in or witnessed illegal activities, they face potential criminal liability themselves. By cooperating with investigators and providing evidence against Trump, they might secure immunity deals. They might avoid prosecution. They're protecting themselves by turning on Trump before Trump can use them as scapegoats. Conscience is another possible motivation. Some officials might have gone along with Trump's directives initially, but came to regret it. They realized they'd been part of something illegal or unethical, and they decided they couldn't live with that. So they're coming forward to tell the truth, to make things right, to expose the wrongdoing, even though it means betraying the president who appointed them. That's a harder decision to make, but some people reach a point where they can't keep covering up crimes. Political calculation is a third motivation. Some cabinet officials might see that Trump's presidency is failing, that he's going to be impeached or lose re-election, and they're getting out ahead of the collapse. By cooperating with Congress now, they position themselves as the good guys who stood up to corruption. They salvage their reputations. They make themselves employable after Trump is gone. That's cold political calculation, but it's probably motivating some of the cooperation we're seeing. Whatever the motivations, the evidence these officials are providing is apparently damning. Based on reports about the impeachment articles being drafted, cabinet officials are testifying about illegal directives from Trump, orders to do things that violate federal law, instructions to ignore congressional subpoenas, commands to cover up wrongdoing. All of that would constitute abuse of power and obstruction of justice. And when you have cabinet secretaries testifying that Trump personally ordered these actions, that's very powerful evidence, because these are credible witnesses with firsthand knowledge. Cabinet officials are also apparently providing documents. internal White House communications, memos detailing decisions, emails showing Trump's involvement in controversial actions, meeting notes. All of that creates a paper trail. And paper trails are gold for investigators because documents don't forget or misremember. They're fixed records of what happened and when. So when cabinet officials hand over documents showing Trump ordered illegal actions, that's evidence that's very hard to refute or explain away. High-level cover-ups are apparently part of what's being exposed. Cabinet officials are testifying about efforts to hide wrongdoing from Congress and the public, about destroying documents, about instructing subordinates to lie, about coordinating false statements. All of that is obstruction of justice. And when you have multiple cabinet officials all confirming the same cover-up efforts, that's a conspiracy charge. Trump and his senior staff working together to obstruct investigations. That's serious criminal conduct. And it's apparently well documented thanks to cooperating officials. The corruption allegations are also significant. Some cabinet officials are apparently testifying about how Trump used his office for personal gain, about steering government contracts to Trump businesses, about making policy decisions based on what would benefit Trump financially rather than what's best for the country, about using government resources for campaign purposes. All of that violates ethics laws and potentially criminal statutes, and cabinet officials with direct knowledge providing evidence makes these corruption charges much stronger than they've been in past investigations. The fact that this cooperation has been happening secretly is important because it means Trump didn't know his own cabinet was turning on him. He couldn't prepare, couldn't spin, couldn't threaten or intimidate these officials into silence. They went to Congress quietly, provided evidence. And now Congress is ready to move forward with impeachment backed by testimony Trump didn't know was coming. That's strategically brilliant, and it's devastating for Trump's defense because he can't claim these officials are lying when he didn't even know they were cooperating until it was too late. The bipartisan nature of the Senate defections is crucial. When senators from both parties break ranks and cite evidence against Trump, that changes the political dynamics. Impeachment isn't just a partisan exercise anymore. It's Congress as an institution responding to serious evidence of wrongdoing. And that makes removal more likely because you need 2/3 of the Senate to convict and remove a president. That's 67 votes. Democrats alone can't get there. But if Republicans start abandoning Trump because the evidence is too strong, those 67 votes become achievable, and Trump could actually be removed from office. The insider knowledge senators are citing suggests they've been briefed on what cabinet officials are telling investigators. Congressional leaders typically get previews of major testimony before it becomes public. So when senators say they've seen evidence against Trump, they're probably referring to briefings about what cooperating officials have revealed. And if that evidence is enough to make Republican senators break with Trump, it must be very serious. Because Republicans generally defend Republican presidents. Breaking ranks is politically risky, so they'd only do it if the evidence is overwhelming. The shutdown context is important because it created the crisis that led to these defections. When Trump weaponized the shutdown, kept government closed for extended periods, refused to pay federal workers, he created enormous pressure on his cabinet. They had to implement policies they knew were illegal or unconstitutional. They had to defend indefensible actions, and that pressure broke some of them. They decided they couldn't keep covering for Trump, so they flipped. The shutdown was the last straw that turned loyalty into betrayal. The 7 articles of impeachment represent comprehensive charges covering all of Trump's alleged misconduct, abuse of power for using his office for personal gain and political advantage, obstruction of justice for covering up wrongdoing and defying congressional investigations, corruption for violating ethics laws and enriching himself through the presidency, emoluments clause violations for accepting payments from foreign governments through his businesses, and potentially other charges related to specific incidents. That's a broad indictment of Trump's entire presidency and is backed by evidence from inside the administration. The emergency closed-door hearings serve multiple purposes. They allow cabinet officials to testify without being publicly attacked by Trump and his supporters. They protect classified information that might come up in testimony. They let Congress build their case without tipping off Trump to every detail of what they know, and they create urgency. The emergency designation suggests Congress thinks the situation is so serious they can't follow normal slow procedures. They need to move quickly to address the crisis. The resignations are creating practical governance problems for Trump. When cabinet secretaries leave, departments lose leadership, decisions don't get made, policies don't get implemented, and Trump has to find replacements. But who wants to join an administration that's facing impeachment, where cabinet officials are flipping and testifying against the president, where you might end up getting dragged into investigations yourself? That's not an attractive job. So Trump is probably struggling to find qualified people willing to serve, and that means critical government functions aren't being performed effectively, which creates more problems for Trump politically. The GOP fracturing is probably the most serious long-term consequence. when Republican senators break with Trump, when Republican strategists say defending him isn't worth it, when the party starts distancing itself from a Republican president, that fractures the coalition. Some Republicans will stick with Trump no matter what, others will abandon him, and those two factions will be at war with each other. That internal warfare weakens the party, makes it harder to win elections, and potentially creates a permanent split where the party divides into MAGA and traditional conservative wings that can't work together. Okay, let's break this down. Point 1. Multiple Trump cabinet officials are secretly cooperating with congressional investigations. This is unprecedented. Presidents expect loyalty from their appointees, but Trump's own cabinet is turning against him, providing testimony, handing over documents, exposing crimes. That betrayal from the inside is devastating politically and legally, because these officials have firsthand knowledge of what Trump did, and their cooperation gives Congress evidence that's very hard to refute. Point 2. Cabinet officials are providing explosive testimony about illegal directives and high-level cover-ups. They're testifying that Trump ordered actions they knew were illegal, that he directed cover-ups of wrongdoing, that he abused his authority, and they have documents proving it. That's direct evidence of abuse of power and obstruction, coming from credible witnesses who are in the room. That's the kind of evidence that can actually result in conviction and removal. Point 3. At least 8 senators from both parties broke ranks, citing inside knowledge of oversight probes. This bipartisan defection is huge. When Republican senators abandon a Republican president, that's a sign the evidence is overwhelming. Senators typically defend presidents from their own party, but some Republicans have apparently seen enough evidence to decide they can't defend Trump anymore, and that makes removal actually possible, because you need 2/3 of the Senate, and if Republicans are breaking ranks, those votes might be there. Point 4. Insider sources describe a Capitol meltdown and bloodbath as allegiances fracture. The language itself tells you how chaotic this is. Meltdown suggests complete breakdown of normal order. Bloodbath suggests brutal political warfare. And fracturing allegiances means long-standing coalitions are collapsing. People are choosing sides, and those sides aren't along normal partisan lines anymore. Some Republicans are with Trump, others against him, and that division is tearing the party apart. Point 5. The House faces at least 7 articles of impeachment backed by evidence from defecting cabinet officials. 7 articles is comprehensive. That's not just 1 or 2 charges. That's a full indictment of Trump's presidency, abuse of power, obstruction, corruption, emoluments violations, all backed by insider testimony and documents. That's a much stronger impeachment case than Congress has had before, because the evidence comes from Trump's own people confirming his crimes. Point 6. Emergency closed-door hearings and sudden resignations are creating a historic leadership crisis. The emergency designation shows Congress thinks this is urgent, that they can't follow normal procedures, they need to move fast, and resignations mean Trump is losing his team, cabinet positions are opening up, leadership is disappearing, and Trump can't find replacements willing to serve in this environment. That's a government in crisis, unable to function normally because of the chaos surrounding the president. Point 7. Republican strategists warn defending Trump isn't worth losing seats, revealing deep political calculations. This is the GOP deciding Trump is toxic, that supporting him will cost them elections, so they're telling members of Congress to distance themselves, to let impeachment happen. Because political survival requires abandoning Trump. That calculation shows how weak Trump has become. When his own party sees him as a liability rather than an asset, his political power is gone. Point 8. Fissures in MAGA world are deepening, as some supporters question Trump, giving cabinet defections. Even Trump's base is showing cracks. Hardcore supporters still believe in him, but others are starting to doubt. If Trump's own appointees are turning against him, maybe he really is guilty. That doubt weakens Trump's coalition, peels away support. It makes it harder for him to maintain the unified backing he needs to survive impeachment politically. Point 9. Cabinet leaks expose deep divisions between MAGA loyalists and GOP moderates, threatening party unity. This is the long-term consequence. The Republican Party is splitting. MAGA loyalists who will support Trump no matter what, and moderates who think the party needs to move on. Those two factions can't coexist peacefully. They're at war, and that war is going to weaken the party for years, make it harder to win elections, potentially split the GOP into 2 separate parties. Point 10. This represents one of the most chaotic moments in modern politics, with implications for executive accountability in 2026 elections, because this isn't just about Trump. This is about whether cabinet officials can be held accountable when they participate in presidential wrongdoing, whether internal defections can bring down a presidency, whether Congress can successfully remove a president when his own team provides evidence. All of that sets precedent, and the 2026 elections will be fought over what happened here. Did Congress do the right thing? Was Trump treated fairly? Should voters support the party that impeached him or the party that defended him? So where does this leave us? Congress has unleashed an impeachment storm backed by testimony from Trump's own cabinet officials. Multiple officials are cooperating, providing documents, exposing crimes. Senators from both parties are breaking ranks. The Capitol is in chaos. Cabinet officials are resigning, and Trump is facing at least 7 articles of impeachment with evidence that's much stronger than anything Congress has had before. This is different from past impeachment efforts because the evidence comes from inside the administration, Trump's own people confirming his crimes. That's devastating for his defense because he can't claim this is all lies from political opponents. These are his appointees, people he chose, people who worked for him, and they're saying he committed crimes, that he ordered illegal actions, that he covered up wrongdoing. When your own team turns against you, there's no defense left. The political consequences are massive. The GOP is fracturing, some Republicans defending Trump, others abandoning him, and that division is permanent. It's going to shape the party for years, make it harder to win elections, potentially split the party entirely. Trump's base is even showing cracks. Some supporters starting to doubt whether he's worth defending anymore, and the constitutional implications are enormous. This could establish that cabinet officials who participate in presidential wrongdoing can save themselves by cooperating with Congress, that internal defections can bring down presidency, that no president is so powerful that his own team can't expose his crimes. All of that strengthens congressional oversight, makes it harder for future presidents to engage in wrongdoing because they'll know their own appointees might flip on them. The 2026 elections will be fought over this. Did Congress do the right thing by impeaching Trump based on evidence from defecting cabinet officials? Or was this a coup by disloyal bureaucrats? Should voters reward or punish the party that impeached? Those questions will determine control of Congress and potentially shape the 2028 presidential race. This is a defining moment, a constitutional crisis that will have repercussions for years. And it's all happening because Trump's own cabinet decided he'd gone too far, that they couldn't defend him anymore, that they had to tell the truth, even if it meant bringing down the president who appointed them.